Friends, we're studying Talmud. This is one of the most famous groups of scholars that we're encountering in the Talmud here. We're on page 288 of this book, the Ein Yaakov. Ein Yaakov, here it is, as published by Art Scroll Masorah Publications. We're on page 288. And we're learning about a coup that happened in the academy in Babylon. No, was it in Babylon? This would have happened actually in the land of Israel. No. I'm not sure exactly where this happened. But the coup took place in the yeshiva. I don't know, something tells me it was in Israel. I think it was in Israel. It wasn't in Babylon. And these guys who were Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, well, the head of the academy was Rabbi Gamel. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah was a Kohen, priest, the successor to Rabbi Gamliel, who was deposed because he humiliated Rabbi Yeshua, who was arguing with him. Can you imagine? Rabbi Yeshua was arguing with the authority of Rabbi Gamliel. Now, it wasn't a personal attack. And the reason that Rabbi Gamliel needed to humiliate Rabbi Yeshua by forcing him to stand while everybody else was sitting during the lecture was not to protect his own honor as much as it was to protect the office. Because what happens when the office of the president is insulted, is conflicted upon, then it could split the nation, it could split the academy. It's critical to enforce unity, conformity, and rule of law. And that's why he was enforcing this, his authority, throwing his weight around. Problem was that the sages felt that it was a little excessive. And that's why they felt they had to take away Rabbi Gamliel and they didn't want to put Rabbi Yeshua in his place because that would be, slap in the face of Rabbi Gamliel to put the one that he humiliated in his place. So they put Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. We spoke about him. He was younger, much younger. He was either 14, he was 18 years old. And we read about him in the Haggadah. And there, what happens is that we learned in the previous class of this series, and you can watch the series on YouTube, that we learned that Rabbi Gamliel revealed through his actions that he was driven not by ego but by humility. It was very beautiful to see how his motivation was entirely by humility, to the point that the day that he was deposed, what would you do the day that you were deposed from your leadership position? The first minute he was deposed, he comes back to the yeshiva and studies humbly as a student, because he realized if the academy wants me down, then I'm down. But I'm not leaving the house of study for even 1 minute. How's that for humility? Imagine the CEO of a company is taken down, right? And they put him down in the factory line, and the next day shows up to work in the factory line like no problem. Most people wouldn't do that.
Rabbi Yerson, when he wanted to elevate him to the Rebbe, I heard that he didn't want it at first. They had to keep pushing him. And
very good example. So, Mark, very good example. When the previous Rebbe passed away, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson passed away on the 10th of Shvat in 1950. This would be sometime in January 1950. Shoulders a giant above his peers. But the Rebbe refused for an entire year. They pestered the Rebbe, and the Rebbe refused. Right? What would happen if somebody offered you the CEO of American Express position? Would you push him away for a whole year, Keith?
Think about it. I have to think about it.
When do I start?
I'll take it under advisement.
So, Rabbi Akiva also was part of this group. He came up recently in the conversation. And I want to point out that I spoke about these four in Shabbos when we spoke about the incredible difference between Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues, because the other colleagues came from royal or very distinguished lineage. Rabbi Gamliel came from the line of David. He's the descendant of Judah. He's the kingship of Israel. Rabbi Yeshua was a Levi. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah was a Kohen, coming from Aaron, coming from Moses. And Rabbi Akiva was a nobody. He was a convert. He was a descendant of Gentiles. In fact, not just Gentiles. He was a descendant of Haman. How's that for a pedigree? Yamad Rabbi Akiva ben Haman Maftir. Right? I mean, seriously. What kind of yichus is that, right? Yet, Rabbi Akiva is the master of transformation, which is why I have to tell you, and I've said this many times, that to me, My most favorite character in all of Talmudic literature is Rabbi Akiva. The man who was able to see the good in the bad, the laughter within the tears, as is that famous story of these four sages in the end of Tractate Makos, because he was the one who cracked the code for us, as illuminated by our Rebbe. He was the one that cracked the code of why bad things happen to good people. On Shabbos, whatever, without getting too much into it. That was a sermon, I'm not going to repeat it. Okay, so we're carrying on, page 288. What happens now? Now they just figured out. The sages just figured out. They see the actions of Rabbi Gamliel, the former president of the academy, and they see the intensity of his humility, the authenticity of this leader who cared nothing about his own ego, yet he fought valiantly for protection of the dignity and the honor of the office that he represented. And they're like, this guy's awesome. Let's put him back. Let's put him back in his place. Maybe we made a mistake. Let's see what happens. The sages weighed the next step. They said, how shall we do this? Shall we remove Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who's recently been appointed as the new president of the academy? Should we remove him completely from the position of Nasi? Remember, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was a young man, and he only had a black beard. And it was embarrassing when he asked his wife, should I accept the position of the leader of the academy? She said to him, you look like a kid with a black beard. No one's going to respect you. And that's why we say in the Haggadah, do you remember these words in the Haggadah? You know what the Haggadah is? Yeah. We say, remember that rabbi in the Haggadah, he says, I am as if 70 years old. Do you remember that guy?
That was Solomon.
No, it wasn't Solomon. It was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, this guy. Because overnight his beard turned white. Can you imagine his beard turned white? His beard turned white overnight. Why? Because it was a gift from God to make him look senior. You know who else had that happen to? Someone else that happened to in the Talmud. Was it Moses? No, not Moses. Someone else that happened to that.
Not the guy who lost his hair, Samson. Or...
No, there was someone else. Was it Avram Yitzchak? I'm trying to remember right now. Someone in the Torah that God changed his. My son will remind me. Remember? Was it Avram and Yitzchak who looked identical to each other, or Lot who looked identical to Avram? Yeah, I think it was Yitzchak. They made Yitzchak. Hashem made Yitzchak. It says these are the Eila Toldos. Yitzchak, Avram, Holiness, Yitzchak. These are the generations of Isaac. Abraham bore Isaac. Why do we need to know that Abraham bore Isaac? Because remember, Sarah, the mother of Isaac, was held captive in the house of a king of the area in the Bible. And the scoffers of the generation were mocking and saying that Yitzchak is not the son of Abraham, but rather the son of that abusive king. So that's why Hashem created Yitzchak's face identical to Abraham, that it was impossible to say otherwise. It was like a carbon copy of his father. And then it was obvious that Yitzchak was born to Abraham. Anyways, so Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, by the way, so just a quick word about beards here, folks. What's the significance of beards? Why do our rabbis have beards? You ever thought about this? Yeah? So why do rabbis have beards?
Like the talits?
You're not allowed to cut.
No, talits. I'm talking about beards.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's in
It's like a
they
tal-
have a beard because of the talits or something.
Okay.
You're not allowed to shave.
The Torah tells us a biblical commandment that you're not allowed to destroy your beard. Bal tashchis, you're not allowed to destroy the edges, the corners of your beard. What are the corners of your beard? 1, chin. 2 is like the cheek. And then this is the payas. What are they called? Side locks, right? You're not allowed to destroy them. Now the question is, what does destroying mean? There is a raging debate in the Acharonim and the latter sages about what the definition of destroying is. All agree that a razor cut is biblically prohibited. Cutting with a knife. You have that like Gillette thing, the shaver with one blade. That's a very close shave to the skin. All agree that is biblically prohibited.
Why is that? But since it grows right back.
Dude, it's what it says in the Torah.
It
says back. You're not allowed to destroy your beard.
Yeah, destroy. But you're not destroying it.
How would you destroy your beard in a way that would never grow back, short of blowing it up?
You do lasers.
Lasers. Okay. So you're introducing a new way. Okay, man, you're introducing a new way. Fine. Maybe they should have thought about this. Okay, maybe. Listen, I do not want to cast aspersions, God forbid, on the Jews that do cut their beards. So Yeah, I'm not judging. I'm just giving you perspective. So all agree. This is a fact. All agree that cutting with a razor is not allowed. You're not allowed to cut with a razor. If you're gonna cut your beard, then get what's called a scissor cut. Now, I'm no expert in razors or shavers, but there's something called, like, there's like the Gillette, which is like they advertise and they say it's a very close cut. You won't even have a tiny inchy weensy beard. You'll have a nothing beard, right? But then there's something that's like a scissor cut, which is 2 blades, right? That one, according to many opinions, is not considered destroying your beard by biblical prohibition. According to Chabad, do I use? No, I don't use it.
No, the scissors. Is it the same scissors with your son who had where they're cutting his hair, or is it different scissors?
Scissors is a scissors.
Okay, but
There's a scissors, there's 2 blades. No matter if it's a big scissors, a small scissors, what's this? 2 blades. That's what I'm talking about, the electric trimmer. Oh, so it's called a trimmer, not a razor. Interesting, it's called a trimmer. Okay, very good. Keith would say so. It's called a trimmer, not a razor. So a razor is prohibited. A trimmer would be permitted according to those opinions. The opinion of Chabad, since the 3rd Rebbe ruled, the Rebbe that Tzemach Tzedek, he ruled this in the 19th century, that even a trimmer is biblically prohibited. That's why Chabad doesn't cut the beard. Somebody once asked me, this wonderful old lady in the community, Rabbi Vigler, your beard is so perfectly groomed. Where do you what did she ask me? I don't know. Where do you have
what's
it?
your beauty part?
Yeah. I said to her, Shola, her name was Shola. I said, Shola, you may not believe this. I guess I was younger, so my beard was a little shorter. But I said, I've never touched my beard in my entire life. Horror. Okay. So why am I telling one more thing about this? The Rebbe explains, many people ask the Rebbe for blessings for financial prosperity. And the Rebbe would say to them, you want a blessing for financial prosperity? Grow your beard. Let it grow. What's the connection between a beard and money? We know that there's 13 attributes of divine mercy. And they come in the Torah. These are the 13 attributes of divine mercy, which Moses learned when he was up on the mountain. And he learned that whenever they're recited, they never return empty-handed. Whenever these 13 attributes of mercy are recited before God, they're extremely deep, mystical sequence. But when you say them, they never return empty-handed. So when God was very angry with the Jewish people after the sin of the golden calf, Moses unleashes his unconventional weapon of the 13 attributes of mercy, and God really doesn't have a choice but to, so to speak, has to acquiesce to forgive the people. So the Rebbe said, and this is documented in Kabbalah, that the 13 attributes of mercy are manifest. Every divine attribute is manifest in this world. Where do the 13 attributes of mercy manifest in this world? In the 13 strands of the beard. This is what the Kabbalah tells us. Therefore, if you want to experience divine mercy in your world, you need to let your beard grow. That's what the Rebbe was saying to people. You want to experience financial success and prosperity, let your beard grow. Right? Just a side note over here. Anyways, I'm sorry, that was a total tangent. Forgive me. So they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with the leadership here of the academy, because they want to kind of give it back to Rabbi Gamliel, who was the head of the academy. They sort of feel bad because they realize that he was so motivated by truth and humility, but they don't want to do that. Should we remove Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah completely from the position of Nasi? We just appointed the guy. It's not fair. We cannot do that because we have a tradition that in matters of sanctity, we elevate and we do not lower. This is a very beautiful concept, friends. In matters of sanctity, we go up, we never go down. I want to just explain to you what this means. It's a very beautiful. If a community has managed to build a shul of a certain beauty, you don't downgrade to move back into a storefront, for example. If you have accustomed to give a certain degree of charity every year to tzedakah, you don't go down. You go up. You never go down. If you've purchased a pair of tefillin of a certain quality, you don't go backwards, right? If you spend a certain quality of life in your Shabbos table, right? You know that it's a mitzvah to spoil your wife? To spoil your wife. Spoil.
She's listening.
No, it's a mitzvah. My wife is a mitzvah. Seriously. It's an honor. It's a religious duty. It's a spiritual a spiritual greatness to respect your wife. The Talmud says that a man is obligated to respect his wife as much as he respects himself, and to honor his wife more than he honors himself. Isn't that interesting? You're obligated to respect your wife as much as you respect yourself, and you're obligated to honor her more than you honor yourself. How's that? Why am I telling you that? Because if you've accustomed to buying your wife a certain degree of gifts or of a certain mode of living, it's not supposed to go down, because that's not just a financial thing. It's actually a religious thing. It's a spiritual, holy experience, right? So, Mailin Bakoidash, Veloy, Mayridin. Ooh. We got some weird heckling going on here in the comments. But a warm welcome to Marnie, somewhere in a cruise in the middle of the North Pole, I think. Hope you're safe and warm. Juana in New York. Leah, not know where you are, but nice to meet you. Bocher Tov to you. Leah and Stacy and Shelly, nice to see you. Fran from Northern Florida. Howard Goodman, I think, is here visiting. First time. I don't know if I've seen you before. And a language that I don't understand. Hi. Looks Philippines, sort of. Okay. We actually discovered yesterday that we have students from over 50 countries studying Torah with us. Students from over 50 countries. Qatar. We have 188 students in Qatar. Saudi Arabia, I think we have over 700 students. This is kind of interesting going on here with what's happening in our Torah study. I was at the National Jewish Retreat yesterday, 2 days ago, and a guy came over to me and he said, nice to meet you, Rabbi Bigler. I know you very well. I said, he tells me he's a chaplain in the U.S. Army or something. He's a chaplain. I don't know what exactly kind of chaplain he is, but he says that he gives a class on the gates of trust. And he says the way he prepares his class. Oh, Keith, you were there. And he says that he watches our classes that we taught over here, and from our classes he prepares his class. Wow. So he says, I want you to know I study with you every day. Isn't that nice? Very nice. Oh, Marty's safe. Well, safe home. Thank God. Oh, COVID. Why'd you bring COVID with you?
Yeah.
Couldn't bring some other souvenirs from the boats. Okay, let's keep on going, guys. So we go up in Torah study. We never go down. Marty should be healthy and safe. A very powerful principle for us to apply in our lives, right? We go up. We never go down. Let me give you further examples. If you've accustomed yourself to davening a certain length of time, I daven 45 minutes morning minyan. You don't go down to do it in 23 minutes. You don't do the express lane, right? Whatever you've given to God, you go up, you don't go down. So every year you look at your charitable contributions, you say, how can we raise it a little bit? How can we go up? We never go down. And by the way, God matches us. This is a very spiritual concept, powerful concept in Jewish spirituality. Is midah keneged midah, but midah she'adam moeded ba moeded in loy. In the way that we initiate to God is the way that God reflects back to us. So that says in Psalms 121 that we read here every single day, Hashem tzilcha yad yaminecha. God is your shadow at your right hand. Do you know how the Baal Shem Tov interprets that verse? God is your shadow.
Like a shadow, when you move, it moves.
Exactly. My son just did it beautiful. My son just moved his hand exactly in the way that I move my hand when I teach it. So I'm very honored that you did that, because I always teach guys that just as you move your hand, the shadow follows your every move. So too, God follows your every move, which means like this, folks. When you step out of your comfort zone for God, to go above and beyond your capacity, to give God more time, to give God more space, to give God more money, to give God more of your mindset, more of your heart space, more of your soul space, more of your attention rather than less, then God reciprocates in kind and gives you the same. But if, God forbid, a Jew says, God, you know what, last year I gave you X amount of dollars. This year, I think you could do with less. You have other sources of revenue, right? And then God says, okay, so last year I gave you this much, God forbid. You also have other sources of revenue. God matches us. He meets us exactly where we meet him. And he gives us the steering wheel. He allows us to determine. When you go out of your way to do something awesome for God. Somebody in the community came over to me a few months ago. And he said, Rabbi, I just did something so crazy. I never thought I would ever do such a thing in my life. It was a very, very unique and special and rare mitzvah that he had done, that he was not obligated to do, but he went out of his way and he spent a tremendous amount of time and money and resources and everything else to make sure that this mitzvah was fulfilled. And he says to me, Rabbi, you won't believe what happened to me afterwards. He said, I don't remember if it was financial or some other form of success, that he experienced some sort of a blessing he experienced in his life that blew him out of the ballpark, right? Because in matters of holiness, we go up, we never go down. Let's keep on going. Therefore, once Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah has been elevated to the position of the president of the academy, we cannot demote him. Shall perhaps one master lecture 1 week and the other master 1 week? In other words, they should do an alternating roster. I.e., that way nobody gets demoted, right? Should they switch off weeks in delivering the lecture, that arrangement too is unacceptable because it will lead to jealousy. Why would it lead to jealousy? Because the Talmud tells us the tractate Chulin, 2 kings cannot rule 1 crown equally. You gotta have one person's got to have his hand on the steering wheel. You gotta have 1 pilot. If you have 2 pilots, well, you have 1 pilot, 1 co-pilot. But if you have 2 people in charge, it doesn't really work. Rather, let Rabbi Gamliel lecture 3 weeks and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah lecture 1 week. Ooh, why is that better? Since by right they should have reinstated Rabbi Gamliel as Nasi without Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah at all. And the only reason Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was kept in his position was because of the rule that in matters of sanctity we don't go down. And they felt that it was enough to give Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah 25% exposure 1 week per month. Okay. The Gemara comments, and this is the meaning of what the Masa said in the Braisa in Chagiga, tractate Chagiga, that when a certain sage once instructed his students to repeat to him what he had heard in the lecture in the Mesivta that week, he began by asking them, when they asked him, what did you learn in the yeshiva? He began by saying, Shavua shel mi, Shabbos shel mi hoyisa. Whose week was it? That's how he began. Whose week was it? Why? What did it matter? Whose week was it? It depended on, and the answer was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's week. In other words, who was giving the sermon that week? That was the question, right? And I remember, I've told you this before, that this story that we're learning here, this entire account of the coup that happened in the yeshiva, is a very famous story. We learn tremendous amounts of laws from this entire narrative, and that's why it's important to remember all these details. In light of what we had just seen, this question and answer are understandable because there are some weeks in which the lecture was given by Rabbi Gamliel 3 times, and others once a month in which it was given by Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And the Gemara ends the story with a final note, and that student who originally was asked a question, he was asked, this whole story, how did this whole hullabaloo begin? Right? Do you remember how the hullabaloo began? When a student asked, is praying Ma'ariv, the evening service, is it optional or is it mandatory? That's how we began this whole thing, right? Is praying now we know the morning service is mandatory. We know the afternoon service is mandatory. The question wasn't the evening service. Remember, we brought two different opinions as to what the source of the 3 daily prayers is, right? Is the source of the 3 daily prayers is it that is it because of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? And I wrote about it in my email this week, if you read my email, that Jacob was the one that instituted the evening prayers because Jacob, who suffered so much and yet was able to find the light in the dark, the good and the bad, the blessing within the curse, right? Remember, he was beaten up all night long by that hoodlum. And what does he say to the hoodlum as the hoodlum says to him, I got to go? He says, no. It doesn't say come back. He says, I'm not letting you go before you bless me, right? As opposed to somebody, if somebody was beating you up, God forbid, not you. If somebody was beating somebody up, and he says, I apologize, I have to leave, right? What would you say? If somebody was beating you up and he says, yeah, I'm really sorry, I got to go now. What would you say? Jacob says, no, you're not going nowhere before you bless me. Because Jacob understood that every bad thing is really hidden good.
He's the one who had Joseph was in prison for 27
Correct.
years.
That's right. So Jacob was the one that prayed at night. Because it's easy to pray in the daytime when the light is shining and when the cash is flowing and the doctors are not calling. It's great. At nighttime, when the lawsuits are raging and the money's tight and the kids aren't responding, right? And the relationship is crackling, right? That's nighttime. Now you got to pray. This is Jacob, right? The other opinion we said was that the 3 daily prayers is because of the daily offerings in the temple, which were morning and afternoon. And the evening one was just like an extra. So it depends on how you interpret it, right? By the way, Chassidus tells us, and I've said this to you many times, Chassidus tells us we have 5 parts of our soul, 3 of which we are conscious of. The lower 3 parts of our soul are our biological life. Number 2 is our emotional being. And number 3 is our intellectual being. It's called nefesh, ruach, and neshama. These are the 3 lower levels of our soul. Physically alive, emotionally aware, and intellectually conscious, right? Those are 3 levels of existence. Some people are just not intellectually conscious. Just think about that. They're like emotionally, like they'll lash out at you emotionally, but there's very little intellectual processing going on. They're stuck in that second level. Other people aren't even emotional. You know, people that watch Netflix for 4 days straight. I guess they're breathing. If you took a pulse, they're probably breathing. But there's very little intellectual or emotional processes going on over there, right? I mean, they're on this lower level. They're just alive. They're like on life support, right? You know, this woman, she's talking to her husband. And the husband tells her, you know, if I ever land up in that situation where my entire life is being supported by a machine, by a life support machine, like in the hospital, where my entire being, my entire existence is kind of based because of a machine I've plugged into the wall. Do me a favor, don't torture me, just pull the plug. So they're sitting in the living room, you know, they're watching TV. She gets up, walks over to the TV, pulls the plug. So why do we daven 3 times a day? Because the journey of davening is the daily prayer is not that God should know that God is great. It's not because God is suffering from such an inferiority complex. It's not that God has suffered such trauma in his early childhood that he is codependent upon our adulation and praise. No, that's not a kind of God that we worship. That is pathetic. The reason that we pray is not because we want God to know that God is great. It's because we need to know that we're not alone. It's because we need to calibrate with our own core, that our outer perceptions of reality recalibrate within our core. You know, when you're like a little shaken, you want to go, right? You want to kind of breathe in, you know, when you want to experience serenity. How do Jewish people experience serenity? What do you do if you want to calm down? 6 days of the week you shall work, but in the 7th day you shall rest, right? How do you rest in the 7th day? You just stop working? You just close your email and that's it? Turn your phone off? Is that it? No. What you do is you light the Shabbos candles. And what do the women do? They go like this. 1, 2, 3. And then they bless. Because they're drawing inwards. Tranquility is not the product of the cessation of work alone. Serenity is achieved when you connect with your inner core. And that is what Shabbos is about. That's why you want to go to shul. Not because you have to, but because going to shul connects you with your faith, with your family, with your friends, and with your own inner core. Studying Torah is not a chore as much as it is a journey into yourself. Fulfilling a mitzvah is connecting with your deepest organic truth, as opposed to doing another obligation from a control freak God that cares about your spoons and knives. And that's why we daven 3 times a day, because when we daven, we're recalibrating. It's very easy to forget who you are and where you're going. Israel has all sorts of creative units in their army. In the 50s, there was a unit, the early unit of the Mistarvim. Till today, there's a very, very powerful unit called the Mistarvim, which are the Jews that dressed up as Arabs. And what they do is these guys have guts of steel. They go into the Palestinian territories. They go deep into enemy countries. And then they live. They live there. They hang out there. They cover their kafirs. They speak fluent Arabic. And what happens is that they're coordinated. They're trained so that when the army comes in, they know exactly who's the troublemakers. They know who's who. They know where to go. They basically embed their own people. So in the 50s, what they did is that they decided to go all out. They sent out these units to go into the Palestinian territories to marry Palestinian women and to birth Palestinian children. And that way they have a real cover. They have a real cover. I mean, can you imagine? Mm-hmm. Imagine an 18-year-old Israeli boy speaks Arabic. They send him in and he lives the double life, right? But he's really embedded. I mean, that's building a cover.
Wow.
Problem was that these guys developed dual loyalties.
Develop what?
Dual loyalties. Because now their wives and children, their father-in-law, their brother-in-law, they're all these Arabs. So they were struggling with loyalties. They couldn't remember who they were. So they aborted the mission. They canceled the mission. They kind of pulled these guys back, maybe with their families or without their families. It's all top secret. But what they did is that they were so embedded is that they forgot. What are the odds? What are the odds that you send your child on a mission that they forget what they're there for. You know, you could send your child to Publix and they could forget what they're there for, right? Right? Imagine you sent your child to Siberia for 50 years without a cell phone. Do you think they'll remember who they are? Remember why they're there? Probably not. Yet God has done that for us. He took us, a piece of him, we're his children, and he sent us not to Siberia, but to a different planet, to a different dimension, behind a one-way glass where he sees us, we can't see him. It's called planet Earth. And here, the Jewish people, the children of Israel, they have to grapple with enemies, with money, with international relations, with anti-Semitism. They're going to grapple with geopolitics and with the struggles of making a living, with being bullied in school and trying to get into a school that you're going to be bullied into out of whatever, right? It's like a crazy world. And now, oh, by the way, you're a Jew too. What? Oh, I'm a Jew? Really? And then the rabbi calls. Oh, all he wants is my money. Just don't ever call me again. Goodbye. They forget that they're a Jew, and this is why I'm here, right? That's why we have the call of the shofar. What's the shofar? One of the reasons for the shofar is to once a year is to remind us. We're going to stop blowing the shofar in a few days, right? In 2 weeks. The purpose of the shofar is to remind us who we are. It's a pure sound flowing straight from the heart. It's not fancy music. It's not a trumpet. It's not a trombone. It's not a cello. It's not a fancy electric violin or something. It's a simple sound that comes straight from the heart to remind us of our core. It's a humble, organic, earthy tone that just reminds us of where we're coming from, right? Because we have to remember, and that's what the purpose of the 3 daily prayers is. We don't daven because we have to. We daven because our survival depends on it. It's like a scuba diver needing to check his, his air supply. I don't want to check my air supply. I'm not interested in checking my air supply. Nobody's watching. I'm not going to check it. Who are you fooling if you don't check your air supply, right? And you don't change your tanks. You got to make sure that you got enough air to keep you going. That's why we daven from a Hasidic perspective. But anyways, back to the Talmud.
Go through the motions coming into temple and stuff, even on Shabbos. Now I realize, you know what? I got to come in for the Torah service. I got to come in for more, and I got to come in even morning. In the morning.
Beautiful. That's the way to do it, Mark. So, anyways, who was the one that had asked that question? Keep it up, man. Who was the one that asked that question? The question about Ma'ariv. This is a very important piece of information. It was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, I want you to know, friends, is probably the most enigmatic character in all of Talmudic literature. He was the one who bridged the gap between Talmud and Kabbalah. He was really the one that wrote down the book of Kabbalah, the book of the Zohar. So just like Rabbi Yehuda the Prince was the one who made the executive decision to write down the oral Torah in the form of the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the one who made the executive decision to write down the Kabbalah in the form of the Zohar. And if you want to read the Zohar in the library here in the shul, we have the Pritzker edition. You can buy it online, Pritzker edition of the Zohar. Highly recommended English translation of the Zohar. It's not very long. It's only about 7 or 8 volumes. Good read. I'm serious. It's not such a big deal. Hello. You know what? I want to react to your laughter up there. I want to react to your laughter, Mr. Keith. You make it sound as if that's such a big achievement.
No, it's not.
And I want to tell you, sir, that yes, you can. Yes, you can. You know what? If you're capable of buying a house, and if you're capable of driving a car and running a business, and you're capable, then you're capable of reading a book, and you're capable of reading 8 books, and you're capable of reading the most foundational text in Jewish mysticism of all time. I'm not asking you to do it in Aramaic without vowels. I'm asking you to do it in English. I think you could read English, right? You could do this.
I was laughing because now we're studying on this, but we'll do it after we study this.
No, so I want you to know that within every laugh there's a little truth there, and I think maybe you don't believe that you can, but I want to tell you, and I want to challenge you 1 year from now, less. I want to challenge you to tell me that you finished the reading of the Zohar.
We got to finish this.
That too. You do that too. Yeah. Okay, let's wrap it up. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Who was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? He was the one who I said he was hunted down by the Romans who wanted to kill him. He was the one that wrote down the book of Kabbalah in the Zohar. You can read it in the Pritzker edition. It's a beautiful translation. And he was a mystic to the point that whenever he comments in the Talmud, you can never interpret his readings at face value, because they're always founded on the mystical interpretation, on the Hasidic approach, on the subterranean, the scuba diving approach. Whereas everybody else was on terra firma, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was miles beneath his colleagues in his depth, in his profundity, in his perceptions. We'll be learning a lot more about him as we proceed. And with that, folks, I'm going to call it a day.
Good
Question. Any questions from our online students here?
Well, that's good.
Go ahead. What's the question?
Okay, you said so the main question at the beginning of this was praying the
Ma'ariv, praying Ma'ariv, yeah?
So I guess in the way that Mike and I, we're starting with the Shema, and we get into these stories and we go down here, and sometimes how do they apply? And I guess we haven't gotten there yet to the whole thing, like those stories that come in between, like the first question and.
I'm not sending you a question.
It's something we have to talk about.
We'll talk about it. Anyways, Thomas Jefferson over here from Norway. Thank you for your lovely email
Yeah, exactly.
and your connection. We're grateful for your connection with us. It's very special to study with all of you folks online here, those that are with us live and those that are with us later. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe. We're only at like 2,500 subscriptions to our channel. So let's try to hit the 10,000 goal, folks. Let's try to build it up. Spread it to your friends. Tell them they can study Torah with us, wherever you are. I mean, it couldn't be easier today to study Torah. You can study Torah while you're brushing your teeth. Somebody sent me a picture yesterday. He was in his car. He had this YouTube channel on his screen. Obviously, you never want to watch Torah study and drive. You look at the road and you can listen, right? And he was studying Torah. It was amazing. We were connected. Anyways, folks, have a great day. Shalom, and take it over the top.
You said the